Confident and uncompromising, President Zelensky and his defiance steal the show at the G7. Ukraine's leader took to the stage in Japan and denied Russia has taken control of Bakhmut.
Bakhmut is not captured by the Russian Federation today. There cannot be two or three interpretations of this.
Also tonight, pressure mounts on the Home Secretary after reports she may have broken the ministerial code over a speeding fine. And
all smiles because they have finished off here with a win.
The silverware keeps on coming for City as the blue side of Manchester celebrates 5 titles in 6 years.
Even after 6 seasons, it's still so good.
We had nothing, you know what I mean? And now it's all.
This is DanTV News with Lucy Watson.
Good evening. On the final day of the G7 summit in Japan, the meeting was dominated by the visit of Ukraine's President Zelensky. He stood at the podium in Hiroshima and denied Bakhmut had fallen into Russian hands, which contradicted claims from Moscow that the eastern city is now under their control. Volodymyr Zelensky also used the opportunity to push for maximum diplomatic support, as well as more help on the ground in Ukraine. The US President Joe Biden said there was an unwavering commitment to the country. In amongst that G7 solidarity, world leaders also took the chance to take aim at China, with the British Prime Minister describing it as the biggest challenge of our age. Our Asia correspondent Debbie Edward sent this report.
In a visit filled with symbolism, the G7 briefly became the G8 again on Sunday. Volodymyr Zelensky, dressed in military green, joined a summit family photo that used to include Russia. President Putin was excluded from this alliance 9 years ago after his illegal annexation of Crimea. The Ukrainian president was the last world leader to lay flowers at Hiroshima's Peace Memorial Park. It is a sobering place to reflect on the war he is fighting, and in particular the battle in Bakhmut, which he denied has fallen into Russian hands.
Але це говорить про те, що Бахмут не охоплений на сьогодні Російською Федерацією. Ніяких 2 або 3 тлумачень цьому не може бути.
President Zelensky stole the show on the final day of discussions. His placement next to the Indian Prime Minister was no mistake. He was here to appeal directly to those nations which have so far remained neutral on the war.
To see President Zelensky standing shoulder to shoulder with his G7 allies, I think sends a powerful message to Russia and the world that we are united behind President Zelensky and his people and will continue to support him for as long as it takes.
We're thankful.
There was also the opportunity to personally thank President Biden for approving F-16 fighter jets and a new package of military aid. It was the Japanese Prime Minister who invited President Zelensky. Fumio Kishida has taken a strong stance on the war in Ukraine, hoping, if the time comes, Europe would support Asia against Chinese aggression.
The G7 was hosted here to demonstrate a commitment to peace. That the summit was overshadowed by war, one ongoing in Ukraine and another the world is trying to prevent over Taiwan, shows there is still a lot of work to be done. We are standing in what was Hiroshima's ground zero, and all these years later, nuclear-armed conflict is still a threat.
President Zelensky said images in the Hiroshima Museum resonated with what was happening in Ukraine today.
І я вам скажу відкрито, що фотографії зруйнованої Хіросіми саме нагадують мені, абсолютно нагадують Бахмут і інші такі містечки.
He will return to Kyiv buoyed by G7 solidarity, but impatient for the breakthrough that will end his quest for peace. Debbie Edward, DanTV News, Hiroshima.
Well, more than 5,000 miles from Hiroshima, the battle for Bakhmut continues. President Zelensky is defiant that it is still under Ukraine's control. Our correspondent John Ray is in Chasiv Yar, close to Bakhmut, and sent this update on the situation.
For a long time, it has seemed that it was just a question of time before the city of Bakhmut fell to the Russians. That victory was claimed yesterday by the head of the Wagner mercenary forces, who have been doing so much of the fighting for the Kremlin. It is perhaps a symbolic victory more than anything. The city itself has been reduced to smoking ruins. And for several weeks now, the Ukrainians have only been able to hang on in a few streets on the west of the city. But importantly, they have been taking territory on the northern flank and to the south, and holding ground where we are to the west. So it is possible, perfectly possible, that the battle for control of the city is over, but the battle for Bakhmut will continue for some time.
John Ray in Bakhmut, there nearby. The Prime Minister is facing calls to investigate the conduct of his Home Secretary after reports she asked civil servants to help her avoid getting points on her licence for speeding. Well, our political correspondent Carl Dennan joins me now. Carl, what more do we know about this?
Well, we're all about to get more familiar with the name Sir Laurie Magnus. Sir Laurie is the independent advisor on ministers' interests. The opposition parties all want him to look into this, and I understand that the Prime Minister will consult with Sir Laurie when he returns from the G7. What they'll be talking about is whether or not Suella Braverman broke the ministerial code when she asked civil servants to look into whether she could do a private speed awareness course after being caught speeding. These courses are a normal alternative to taking points on your licence when you've been caught speeding, but they're normally done with a group of other drivers. Now, the Prime Minister was asked about this at the G7. He was visibly annoyed that this was the first question that came up at his press conference, but this is what he had to say.
I don't know the full details of what has happened, nor have I spoken to the Home Secretary. I think you can see firsthand what I've been doing over the last day or so. But I understand that she's expressed regret for speeding, accepted the penalty, and paid the fine.
Now, while that is all true, that is where it ended up, the issue is whether or not she did ask civil servants to do something that could be seen as getting involved in her personal or political life, which could be seen as being against the ministerial code. And that is an issue that the government will want to get cleared up quickly, especially going into a week where immigration and the government's plans to bring immigration down, and therefore the Home Secretary's policies, is likely to be top of the agenda.
Carl, thank you very much for that update. Sinn Fein has become the largest party at council level in Northern Ireland. It is the first time they've come out on top at local government elections in the country, winning 144 seats against the Democratic Unionist Party's 122. Sinn Féin Stormont leader Michelle O'Neill has described the outcome as momentous. At least 12 people have died and dozens more injured after a stampede at a football match in El Salvador. It happened after fans reportedly pushed through a gate into the stadium in the capital of San Salvador yesterday. Supporters rushed onto the pitch to try and escape the crush, with some needing medical treatment. This report now from Charlie Frost.
Rushing across the pitch to bring a fan to safety. It was just 15 minutes into play when panic took over one stand of the El Salvador Stadium, as it became clear a crush was taking place in the tunnel. Spectators trying to get the attention of the footballers and officials below.
There was an avalanche and the gate was pushed down. Unfortunately, there were children, elderly people. They were the ones who were harmed.
Police say 12 people have died, with dozens more injured. Victims filling the pitch once play was suspended, where paramedics did their best to treat them, spectators waving their shirts to cool people down. Some reports believing fans had been sold fake tickets, leaving crowds trying to get into the stadium after the gates had been closed.
Approximately 400 to 500 people gathered. and in the eagerness to watch the game, some fans wanted to open the gate, and when they opened it, a swarm formed. When a swarm of that magnitude occurs, they were starved of oxygen.
El Salvador's president has promised an exhaustive police investigation, writing, "Whoever the culprits are, they will not go unpunished." Charlie Frost, ITV News.
ITV has confirmed that Alison Hammond and Dermot O'Leary will fill in as hosts on This Morning tomorrow after Philip Schofield left the show. He announced yesterday that he was stepping down from presenting the programme after more than 20 years. His co-presenter, Holly Willoughby, will remain on This Morning, but is taking leave until June the 5th. Sir Andy Murray has withdrawn from the French Open, which starts next weekend. The 36-year-old has decided to prioritise playing on his more favoured surface of grass instead and play particular focus on Wimbledon. The three-time Grand Slam champion has only played once at Roland Garros in the past 6 years. And finally, Manchester City knew last night that they had won the Premier League. Today, it was a chance to celebrate with their fans. The results of their home game against Chelsea didn't matter, but ended 1-0 to the champions. It is their 5th trophy in 6 years. From Manchester, Chris Scudder reports.
Simply unstoppable. Champions for a third time in a row. Having trailed Arsenal for so long, City have been relentless in their pursuit of glory. The fans came for a party and got one. City's success is no longer once in a blue moon. They're serial winners. Those who remember the bad times can't get enough.
Brilliant. It's our turn. It's our turn. Over the years, I've been coming for 62 years. So I've seen us go down and down and down. And now this is still, even after 6 seasons, it's still so good.
Now you're winning. What does it feel like? I mean, do you feel
beautiful. It was always United when they won the European Cup and all that. It was always United. We had nothing, you know what I mean? And now it's us.
Inside the Etihad, Chelsea, even bigger spenders this season than City, but with nothing to show for it, formed a guard of honour for the champions. Many of City's star names were rested with cup finals to come, but it made little difference, and World Cup winner Julian Alvarez made it 1-0 City.
And the party is well and truly underway.
Occasionally Chelsea threatened to dampen the party, but this has been a wretched season and little joy. The rest was a stroll in the sunshine for City. Alvarez thought he had a second goal, only for it to be ruled out for a handball. The final whistle was accompanied by a pitch invasion, but when it was cleared, it was all about the players' party. City, the undisputed kings of England, and they're not done yet. Few would bet against them adding the FA Cup and Champions League now for a famous treble only ever done before by rivals United.
Yeah, those City fans about to stream out of the stadium behind me. 12 wins in a row, City unstoppable. Why has it happened? The best players, the best manager, more money than just about everybody else. There are those charges from the Premier League against financial fair play, allegations that they've breached the rules. That's for another day, but right now it's about City, champions of England, the kings of the game in this country, and maybe a treble to come. FA Cup final against Manchester United, Champions League final to come against Inter Milan. If they win that treble, it's all about sporting immortality.
Chris in Manchester, enjoy that atmosphere. And finally, a former Gurkha soldier has made history by becoming the first double above-the-knee amputee to reach the summit of Mount Everest. Hari Buddha Magar lost both of his legs when he stepped on an IED in Afghanistan in 2010. He scaled the mountain with a team of Nepalese climbers led by another Gurkha veteran. Hari says he hopes the feat will inspire others. Well, that is all from us for now. We're back with the late news at 10:05. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye for now.
the warm weather continues. So why not squeeze the most out of the day? Heinz Tomato Ketchup sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello there, very good evening to you. Hope you've had a lovely weekend. The weather has, for most of us, been very kind indeed. We really feel like we're starting to move into something a little bit more reliable now, don't we? As we look ahead to this evening and overnight, very little happening really. The cloud and a few spots of rain from today tending to move around and pull away, long clear stretches as well. And under this, it is going to be a little bit chillier with mist and fog and low cloud forming fairly readily. That's going to give us, at least for many of us, a fairly slow start to tomorrow, that early mist and fog taking its time to clear away, but then the sunshine, which really has some heat in it now, really starting to burn through. It's a much better picture across Scotland and Northern Ireland. As you can see, largely dry, high pressure really giving us a lovely start to a brand new week. Highs again, Cardiff winning the scores on the board, 23 Celsius, which will feel lovely in that sunshine. And in fact, for the rest of the week, it's looking pretty good. You're welcome. See you later. Bye-bye.
Heinz Tomato Ketchup sponsors ITV National Weather.